This is the first mini lecture on monopoly, which is another of our industrial organization topics. By the end of this mini lecture, we'll be able to describe how monopolies arise and differentiate natural monopoly from other types. So, last material we talked about was perfect competition. And if perfect competition is at one end of the competitive spectrum, monopoly is at the other. A monopolist is a single supplier, the only firm in an industry. Okay, let me say that again. A monopolist is a single supplier. So when you hear people saying that Microsoft is a monopoly, can't be. Why not? Well, name two other producers of software. I bet you could. So they can't be a monopoly. Amazon, not a monopoly. Where else can you order stuff online? Oh, let's see. We could go to Walmart.com. We could go to individual suppliers of the goods we wanted. Amazon, not a monopoly. A monopolist is a single supplier. One. Mono means one. Just in case you were wondering, poly means power. Mono means one. Monorail, monorail, monorail. So let's ask ourselves the questions because, if we could set up a monopoly, we would want to. So we want to know what prevents a monopolist from charging an infinite price, what's similar about monopoly and perfect competition, and what's different. How come we get perfectly competitive firms earning zero economic profit, which again, still pretty good, makes them happy, whereas we're going to have monopolists earning very high economic profit. So monopoly going to supply all the output in the market. And since it has no real competition, it can charge any price it chooses. So that means it's going to charge the profit maximizing price. It's going to choose the price that makes it the most money. Examples: US Postal Service is a monopoly. But the Postal Service doesn't charge very high rates, does it? I wonder what's regulating the costs that they have. Your local electric and garbage collection companies, oh boy, they are monopolies. LIPA, I know it's not LIPA anymore, it's PSE&G, but to Long Islanders of a certain age, it's always going to be LIPA. Just like to your grandmother, it still might be Niagara Mohawk. And then we have pharmaceutical firms that sell particular drugs. So, how do monopolies form? With little to no competition, monopolies tend to earn high economic profit. Remember, if everybody can do something, you can't make any money at it. That's why perfectly competitive firms end up moving toward zero economic profit. Profits would attract competition, but we need to have barriers to entry, that is, preventing people from entering the market to compete with our monopolist. So, barriers to entry are legal, technological, or market forces that discourage or prevent potential competitors from entering a market. These can come in a variety of flavors. One, natural monopoly. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. Natural monopoly is going to occur when the cost structure of a firm is such that costs are falling, so it makes sense to produce more rather than fewer. The government is often going to respond either by buying the natural monopoly, which is what Canada did with the Niagara Falls hydroelectric production, or by regulating it, which is what we tend to do with trash collection and water provision. So water and electric companies, great example of that. Sometimes we can get barriers to entry from controlling an important resource. The classic example of this is going to be the De Beers Diamond Company. There's usually no government role for this because owning an important resource, not illegal. A legal monopoly is created by the government involving itself in order to limit the amount of competition in a market. We've seen regulation of airlines and trucking. We have not seen that thus far in the provision of internet services, but phone services, for example, were also regulated this way. Patent, trademark, and copyright, intellectual property. This is often going to be a legally created monopoly. Remember Martin Shkreli a few slides ago, the pharma bro? Yeah, he was making his money due to a patent regulation. And finally, good old-fashioned intimidation of potential competitors. We'll talk more about this when we get into the regulation side of things, but the government does attempt to prevent this. So there are two types of monopoly we're going to focus on. The legal monopoly, that's where laws prohibit competition, and a natural monopoly, where the barriers to entry are something other than a legal prohibition. So for legal monopolies, we can arise from intellectual property. That's the combination of patent, trademark, copyright, and trade secrets. Patents are the exclusive right to use, make, sell, license an invention for a limited time. We have these because if as soon as you produced something, it lost protection, then there would be very little incentive to invent. You could sink all your resources into inventing a new good, and then as soon as it hit the market, somebody else could reverse engineer it and steal your profits out from under you. It's very expensive to produce new inventions, especially pharmaceuticals and other drugs. So we reward the creation of useful goods and services by giving a patent protection. Trademark is an identifying symbol. The Nike swoosh, which economists like to think of as the marginal cost shaped logo of the Nike Corporation. Copyright is legal protection that's given to written works. So books and music would be examples of things that have copyright. Trademark is for like a name or a logo. I could trademark Tom Fletcher as a business name. I can't copyright the words Tom Fletcher. Trade secrets are they're kind of protected by law, but they're really mostly protected by the fact that their companies keep them secret. In the case of a patent, you have to file paperwork with the government identifying how you've created something. With a trade secret, you can keep that yourself. And the trade-off there is that a patent gives you protection, but only for a limited time, whereas keeping something a trade secret allows you to keep it potentially forever. If Coca-Cola had tried to patent the Coca-Cola formula, it would be public knowledge by now. Now, natural monopolies, they arise due to the cost structure of firms. Remember economies of scale? That's where we have decreasing average total costs. Economies of scale, and also this can arise from control of an important resource. These are ways that natural monopolies arise. Economies of scale and the size of the market can limit competition. It can be so expensive to start up a new firm that an existing firm can make more money and spend less by producing even more goods. Natural monopolies generally are going to be regulated so that they don't charge outrageous prices. Typically, we're going to see one firm able to supply the total quantity demanded, but the government then is going to step in and attempt to prevent them from overcharging. So there are four main ways that they do this. The government could just leave the monopoly alone. They tend not to do this. Antitrust authorities, those are like the Federal Trade Commission, could divide the company so new firms can compete. There used to be one phone company called the Bell Company, It was split up into the regional baby bells, Bell Atlantic, Bell Pacific, Bell Central, and each of those has now grown up and become its own company. For example, Verizon and T-Mobile were each baby bells, and now they're their own companies. They're mature on their own. Third, regulators might set prices and quantities for the industry. This is what they did for a long time with the airline industry. Or they could just let the monopoly charge enough to cover its average costs and earn normal profit. This is probably the optimal solution, except that it relies on having good data about what profits and costs are. And if you're a company that's being regulated, are you going to be forthcoming and tell them how much profit you're making? I sure as heck wouldn't. So, quick review. What are the characteristics of a monopoly? What are legal monopolies? Give some examples. How do economies of scale and control of natural resources lead to natural monopolies? And what are the different barriers to entry?